Hi guys, it's Jessie with the blog Jessie's Food, Faith, and Family, and I have another amazing deer recipe for you today. This is actually my all-time favorite way to prepare deer steak. I'm going to show you how to make the best venison or deer steak and gravy recipe. And my cooking method today of the Instapot makes this dish perfect for my August theme on the blog, which is one pot wonders and or casseroles. If you're anything like me and my family, then you have kids going back to school, you might be a teacher going back to work. The hustle and bustle of Friday night lights, football, basketball season, and every other sport you can think of is upon us. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to get a delicious home-cooked meal on the table. And that is what I set out to help you do all month long. So the first thing I did was turn on my saute setting because I want to sear off this deer steak, and I seasoned the deer steak with a little bit of onion powder and garlic powder, Tony seasoning, which again is a favorite in Louisiana of ours. It's a Cajun seasoned salt. You can use any salt that you would like or any seasoning blend that you like. This is just my favorite. I'm going to put that in the Instapot and I'm going to get a good sear on one side. And then I'm going to turn that deer steak over and sear it on the other side. We are literally going to repeat this process of seasoning our deer steak, putting it in the Instapot, searing both sides, taking it out. We're going to continue doing this until we have done all 5 pounds of this deer round steak. Just keep in mind that we're just trying to give it a good sear so that it maintains its juices and it doesn't dry out in the slow cooker. But you are not trying to cook this meat all the way through. Deer steak is incredibly lean and it cooks very quickly, so if you overcook it, that would not be good. Now, while I'm doing this process, I want to explain something else. So 5 pounds of deer steak sounds like a lot, because it really is. This is going to give you about 13 servings, and that's a cup of gravy and meat together. And of course, I serve it over creamy mashed potatoes with a side and some sort of bread, so that is sufficient. But the reason I made such a big batch is because I have another favorite dish that I make with the leftovers. And that dish is called hash. And I know that it might not sound very appetizing, but it is amazing and it will knock your socks off. And it is an old family recipe, family favorite from my childhood. And I know a lot of people say this and that's hash, and they talk about and they describe it, and I say, that's not hash. That's not how my family made it. We always make it from leftover pot roast, or in this case, leftover deer steak and gravy. And we take some fresh potatoes, slice them thinly, put them in a cast iron skillet with chopped up onion and that leftover roast or deer steak, and we let those potatoes get super, super crispy. Then you just add a little bit of gravy for some moisture and serve it. And we always ate it with a bunch of ketchup. So it's more than worth it to me to not only make this dish, which is my favorite venison recipe, but so that I can have that second dish made of the leftovers. And then there's another ingredient that I want to talk about just for a moment. That is the beef powder, Weiler's beef powder, that I love to use. You can't find it in the grocery stores or in Walmart anymore. You can definitely use the Weiler's beef bouillon cubes, and if you go that route, use 2 of those in this recipe. But you can also order the Weiler's beef and chicken powder online, and I would encourage you to do so because it's phenomenal. Okay, while my last batch of deer steak is searing in the Instapot, I'm going to go ahead and cut up 1 medium onion. You can use a white onion or a yellow onion. And I rinsed out my Instapot lid because that's where I had my raw meat. I wanted to go ahead and rinse that out. If you're curious as to why I do that, it's just so I don't have to mess up any more dishes. So I'm going to cut this onion into large pieces because it's going to cook for so long, it's going to break apart. So there's my Instapot with all those delicious brown bits on the bottom, and I poured a little more oil in there. I'm going to put the onion in there and stir it around really well. Now what this is going to do is that onion, as it cooks, is going to release some moisture. That is going to help me scrape up the brown bits off the bottom of the Instapot. And this is where a lot of the depth of your flavor is going to come from. After my onions have became a little bit translucent and picked up some of those brown bits, I'm going to take them out of the Instapot and add them to the dish with my seared deer steak. Then I'm going to add a little bit more oil and I'm going to add my all-purpose flour. We are going to be making our gravy and we're starting with a roux, which is just a combination of oil and flour, and I'm going to show you that here. I'm going to give that a really good stir, and again, I'm still trying to bring up those brown bits off the bottom of the Instapot, and I want to let the flour and the oil turn really dark brown, almost chocolate-like, before I add this water. Now, when I add the water, I'm not adding all of my water. I just wanted to add a little bit, and I grabbed a wooden spoon to help me really get down in there and scrape off those brown bits. I had to put a little work into it, but it is totally worth it because that is what is going to give our gravy the best flavor and color. After I got that fully incorporated, I added my remaining water, and then this is where I'm going to add my 2 cans of cream of mushroom soup and that beef powder or that beef bouillon, whichever one you decide to use. I'm going to mix that in really well. Using a whisk is pretty helpful there. And now it's time to add back in our onion and our seared deer steak. I'm going to give it a good mix after that to make sure everything is incorporated, and then put my Instapot lid on it and set it for 6 to 8 hours. After it's finished cooking all day, I like to give it a taste and to check my seasonings. I encourage you to do this with everything that you cook. I gave it a really good stir. Look how delicious, guys. There's that steak, those onions, that delicious gravy. And I'm going to check it again. I have to taste for this. Also, if you want your gravy to be a little bit thicker, you can take the lid off, put it on the saute setting, and let some of that moisture evaporate. But I like my gravy a little bit runny, just like that. Once I tasted it, I decided it needed a touch more salt, so I added some Tony's, and then I always add the black pepper last. Then I give it another really good mix and get ready to serve it. I paired it with some delicious mashed potatoes and broccoli on the side. You have to make it, guys. You have to.